Yeah, that's so cool, man. I really applaud that and admire that. Because I have noticed in some of my own limited sponsorship that I my intentions are to try to help. Um, First, because I see it as the quickest route to negating my own self-centeredness. But there is this growing conviction that I just want to because that's what needs to be done, and I enjoy it. And but when I wear strictly the 12-step sponsorship hat, I often feel that that's not the correct angle. There's some times where I'm reading the book again for the hundredth time with somebody, whereas I feel that maybe this person needs some in-depth childhood stuff. Sometimes I've worked with someone where it feels like they need regimented physical activity. There's been times where I met with people, or it seems like they need a hug and loving, consistent attention to just show them that their own existence is validated. And then there's also been times where I feel that some people are having a hard time breaking through shame or deep PTSD. And I've wondered, man, I bet some plant medicine would be beneficial for them. And that's why I think that I'm attracted to what you're doing, is because it feels and seems like you have your hands in a bunch of modalities that you can sort of use for whatever presents itself. And I'm not belittling or talking bad about any one modality, but I really think that to sort of be skilled at this, I'm learning that it's nice to know how to use all these tools. But one group won't tell, like the 12-step groups won't tell you about the psychedelic aspect, and those guys probably won't tell you too much about like the physical component of exercise, and then those guys might not tell you about the nutrition. So to sort of have all these worlds meet is cool, and I like to get those conversations going because I felt for myself that's what I've needed. There's times where I've needed affirmations so much to shut up my crazy shame-based voice, to just gently tell myself, Dylan, I love you, sort of build up that ego. There's other times where almost the non-dual route, which I do look as like a fact, but times where that has stabilized for a little bit, where I can negate the whole game by saying I'm none of this. I'm none of that. And at times it also feels like I just need almost military style friend to tell me, here's what you're doing wrong. Let's take what actions we can to set it right. And um, yeah, I appreciate these conversations so much because I think they're all applicable and they're all right. Sometimes maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, sometimes a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Have you found that when you're helping other people that you need to sort of learn them for a bit to find out what they need, what kind of style they need?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, kind of like I'll tell people I can hear, or one of the things I do is I can like hear how they think. So when I'm talking to people, it's about showing up, and holding a certain space, but also there's like almost a tracking that's happening when it comes to the thoughts and how the person's putting together their world. And yeah, and then that does cue me in addition to being able to like feel things intuitively, get intuitive information. And yeah, it's like, oh, okay, like you're saying, like, oh wow, a little bit of this will probably be helpful here, a little bit of that'll be helpful there. Sometimes you got to like 1-2 it. It's like, okay, we're gonna go soft and then hit the gas, or like, okay, I'm gonna come in like really hard and then love them up. um yeah, man, because like we all get lost different, so we're all gonna get found different. Yeah. So
Oh, I like that. That's good. I like that.
yeah. And so like recovery is cool, or we'll talk specifically like the 12-step approach to recovery is pretty awesome. It's a very effective approach and modality for folks that can get on that wavelength and subscribe to the certain like almost like philosophical and behavioral requirements. um but like that's not everybody's cup of tea. So I love the fact now that there's so much more available, so you don't have to just like, yeah, just like shove it down somebody's throat, or really just push them away from healing and self-discovery if they don't drink the 12-step flavored tea. Like there's like this approach, that approach, this approach, that approach. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what were you gonna say?
The other thing that always comes through too, though, is that there's definitely like sometimes with so many approaches, and we just like dabble here, and you don't actually go anywhere. So it's like what I always tell folks is sample it all, and then find something that you jive with for right now, and then invest fully, and get the return. And then maybe in 6 months or 6 years, you'll be over here or you'll be over there, and that's cool. Just do the same thing then. But for now, be here with what works and go with it. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Almost like adhering to one principle, become a black belt in that. And then when you feel that maybe it's getting a little bit stale, you know, yeah, I like that a lot. What would you say? So I forget from when we were talking, were you introduced, um, you're in recovery from, how would you describe your recovery? Would you say, Drew?
So it's a 17 plus year journey at this point. In the beginning, it was very much alcohol, substance, right? Like that was clearly the thing that was causing the most chaos and pain, and so like, yeah, substances and alcohol brought me in. I gave that up. Then I realized gambling was a nightmare, right? So then that became the thing, and then the cigarettes fell off, and then later, about year 10, is when I started to get in touch with the like generational, like familial stuff, like family of origin type stuff. Like I knew conceptually, like, okay, this, that, the other, but it took a little while, I guess, for me to thaw or open up or whatever, to then actually to be able to like feel into like the inner child, and when I was younger, and the impact on my nervous system that growing up in a certain environment and certain energies had, the effect that had on me. So yeah, so the recovery process has definitely evolved over time as I have continued to grow and recognize and release and see and feel, and so, so there's a long answer to that.
Right. I appreciate it, man. So you'd say it almost started off as a 12-step introduction.
I got introduced to the 12 steps by the counselor therapist guy I was seeing at the time.
Okay.
I was definitely wacky. So I was going to see him to talk about it, because really at that point it was everybody else's fault. And we were able to identify like, oh, you know what? Like anytime substances are in play here, like shit hits the fan quickly. So maybe like don't do those for a little bit. And then actually that counselor guy was like, hey, if you get clean for a year, if you get off all this stuff for a year, I'll introduce you to my friends that are like at monasteries and in the spiritual world. And I was like, oh yeah, awesome, cool. So that was the actual like handshake deal that got me to start attending 12-step meetings.
That's cool, like the spiritual biscuit.
Yeah, 100%.
Look, get clean for a year. I'm gonna take you to some cool ass places.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
awesome.
the phrase was he said he would introduce me to people of the path, right? If I got clean for a year, because he had a Buddhist flavor to him, and I was a space hippie, so we kind of vibed like that. And then with like 9 months, I remember I was sitting in a meeting and I looked around. It was just like one of those moments, like out of body, bigger, kind of realization moments. I'm like, oh my God, like I have found like the people of the past. Like I look around the room, it's like these are all people who are investing in their own growth and healing and awakening, and yeah, living a certain way, living by principles. I was like, oh man, he tricked me. He tricked. So the next session I went and I gave him a hard time. I'm like, you tricked me, you lied. Blah, blah, blah. He's like, no. He's like I'll still introduce you to those people. Like just keep doing your thing. I'm like, I don't need to go away. I don't need to run away to that place now. Like I found the groove here, and yeah, and then that was the beginning of 17 plus years of this journey.
Oh man, I felt the same way too when I arrived at the 12-step program. I felt, man, these are my people. But as I really feel that I've gleaned a lot from AA. It's 12-step programs. It's absolutely changed my life. Um, but after a few years, it feels that I need more, or I want something different. And for yourself, what would you say were the circumstances that led you to that change? Was it certain level of healing that the 12 steps couldn't reach? Was it what would you describe it? How did it happen for you?
Well, I would say that it's definitely a very real phenomenon, and actually more common than some of us might know or know of. That like you can all, some of us will max out in a 12-step program, right? So, well, did we freeze for a second? We're good.
Yeah, we're good. Am I frozen?
No. uh, yes, some of us will max out in a 12-step program. You know, like the 12 steps and what they offer is amazing. And for some people, that'll be enough for the rest of their lives, right? But for some of us, we will start to max out because I feel like in some ways, the 12 steps is an introduction to spirituality, right? So it's like, okay, this is Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, right? Like its name is like the problem focus. So it's like, okay, what your problem is, cool, come here, you can stop doing that. But really what is being offered is a different way of life, right? Like a more spiritually grounded, embodied experience. So then if you get on that tip, or you know, that's your groove, yeah, you're gonna then look for other stuff. You know, and so the 12 steps might not be everything for you as you grow. Now I'm 17 years in. I still go to 12-step meetings. You know, I still attend, you know, some of the family ones and some of the personal ones and some of the drug and alcohol ones, because I find tremendous value in being there, in the honest sharing, in the community and fellowship. You know, those all have, you know, significant positive impact in my life. At the same time, though, I don't limit myself to those constraints or that ideology anymore, because as a result of investing in 12 steps and doing my work, I've come into more of a conscious contact with like my own relationship, right, with higher power or universe. And so, yeah, like I don't need the 12 steps to like tell me what's cool anymore. I'm plugged in to my own intuition, my own wisdom, you know, and then the practices that continue to support that and make that available. And so, yeah. And because it's like taboo in those settings too to like step out of that culture at all, or like you can't get well, or you can't, you know, like there's definitely ideological constraints that I think are totally necessary for the early like addiction into recovery movement. But then at a certain point, yeah, like some of us are going to outgrow that. And that's totally, I think that should be more normalized. Um, but you know, like you know, somebody who we're good at lying to ourselves, so we'll take any kind of bullshit and run with it. So
Yeah, and that's what I've been trying to be cognizant of, because
yeah.
this life-changing, really deeply spiritual program, I don't all of a sudden just want to become a non-dual drunk where I'm like, oh, there is no Dylan as I'm drinking whiskey, you know? It's
That's a trunk paw move. But,
so yeah, I totally agree. That was really well said. It's kind of the thing that was an introduction to spirituality. Although throughout my life I've kind of had little whispers and feelings of, it just seems like they have their ancient spiritual practices reworded and packaged for alcoholics. I don't think they came up with any of it. It's just catered towards that specific affliction. And you know, I agree with it. I love it very much. But it did and starts to and is feeling like some of the groups I was involved in is a little bit fraternity like. There wasn't any open discussions on plant-based medicines. It was almost met with fear and tiny undertones of passive aggressiveness. And truly, I'm not resentful. I understand these people, because it's when your life was riddled with drug addiction, it's probably scary to sort of to challenge that with the idea of psychedelics or an alternative healing route. So I understand that people are staunchly guarding their recovery, much as I am, but I think that sort of limits some more nuanced conversations about it. And I'm kind of at the point where I'm seeking people like yourself just to start to have these conversations. My life isn't on fire right now. Things are pretty good, but I'm noticing that there's certain things that um, maybe I can't see my own shadows with these current things that I'm using in AA. Maybe rereading the big book over and over again with a new guy has done as much as it can for me. And I'll continue to do it as a maintenance thing, but some more revelatory healing, familial stuff. I'm starting to get a sense that Dylan needs more. And as a result, I'm passionate to sort of help other people find what they need more in.
Yeah, man. Love it.